All right, and now on to our first tutorial for our 2D studio. We have charcoal that we're going to be starting to work with. And here are some of the supplies. We have a charcoal pencil. We've got a few of these on hand. We have a compressed charcoal, which is the square kind. We don't have the vine, which is the thinner round kind. It's a little bit softer. We don't have those in right now, but that's okay. We've got plenty to work with. We have blending stumps, and we have our kneaded erasers, which are the gray ones. And the cool thing about these kneaded erasers is you can pull them apart, and that's actually, they clean themselves when you pull them apart, so they'll naturally start to clean as they go, because as you know, charcoal is very messy, so you're going to want to work with these a lot. The cool things about these is you can change them into lots of different positions. You can make them really flat and sharp, so you can have certain edges to erase with, and they're just really awesome. So we have some of these in our shading kit as well. All right, so the first thing you want to do is experiment with these. Now, I have a piece of experimental paper here, and the nice thing about these is that they don't get all over your hands when you're using them. You can start by really pushing down, and I would suggest practice some gradations, slowly getting lighter as you go, and seeing the texture that causes as you get lighter and lighter and lighter. Okay, as you can see, the pencil is starting to go away, so I might want to, these are pull-in peels, and so the cool thing is that when you start to peel them, you can actually peel, and as you go, like, it'll start taking these off so that you can have more of a sharp area when you pull. So as long as you don't lose it here. Anyway, it just keeps going and going and going. So anyway, so that'll keep wrapping around until you have more of it exposed. All right, so then once you work with that, you can you can do a couple different things. You can use the blending stump to blend it together, and as you can see, it gets a bit of a more of a softer gradation as we go. It's really good for finding different gradients as we go here. You can also use your finger, so if for some reason you didn't get a blending stump, you can use your finger. Obviously it's not quite as controlled, but if you want a little bit of a messier look and you can handle that, you can use your finger as you go. The other thing that you can use is you can use these different compressed charcoals, and we have a whole bunch of these. This one has a hard, medium, and soft, so you could experiment with these. We have a little bit with them. This right here. And you can do the same thing if you'd like and practice. It's a little bit different than the pencil, a little bit different texture. It's a lot more difficult. You really have to work on light pressure here because it's different texture. You can go in and blend those again using either or. Keep in mind that it's so easy to get fingerprints all over everything with your art. So you might want to keep a piece of paper with you, or really avoid using your fingers. That's what the blending stumps are good for. The other thing that you can do, oh, and speaking of it, while we're on that, one thing that's good too while you're working, you're going to want to keep a piece of paper, kind of keep your hand on a piece of paper so that you're not smudging, because if I start working here, my hand, if you guys can see my my hand now is smudging, and then it's going to start rubbing off on the rest of my things. And so that's one of the downfalls of what this material does, right? It smudges very easily. But if you use your kneaded eraser, you can go ahead and you can make all sorts of different shapes. You can experiment with erasing in the charcoal, and what does that look like, right? How well does it erase? It's never going to pick up all of it, but this eraser does pretty well. This is a pink one. But our kneaded is supposed to do better and pick up even more as you go. So you keep twisting it and you get a clean edge again. You can take up even more as you go. Okay, so experiment with that and see what it'll pick up, what it won't. The more layers of charcoal that you add, the more that it will not pick up. So just keep that in mind. So when you're doing this, experiment with it, you know, practice moving it on the side and creating different lines with it. You know, practice using just the edge. How thin can you make your lines? Here, let me move this up. How thin can you make your lines? How controlled can you make it, right? Will you be, do you work better using a pencil or using, right? Or using the other one, using the square piece, right? What kind do you prefer? And obviously it's going to depend on what you're making, but have fun experimenting with it and make sure you're labeling what each one does and things that you notice with it. So right here I might write, with my pencil I might write it smudges easily. Okay, so how do you prevent that? How do you prevent it from smudging and from it transferring to another piece of paper? We know that it's great for blending. The difference between the medium, hard, and soft. The difference between the square, you've got the pencil, and you've got the square. They have different textures. So that might be the second thing that you come up with. This might be the first thing. You're realizing that it smudges easier, right? Maybe you start working and you realize, oh, I'm smudging with my hand, so use a piece of paper to block it. It's probably best too if you write with a regular pencil so you're not wasting the charcoal. The other thing that you want to know is, let's see, what about the paper? So this is practice paper, right, or your sketchbook. What's the difference between using this and using charcoal paper? You're welcome to use a small piece of charcoal paper to experiment on. I don't want to use too much for the experiment part. You can tape this into your sketchbook when you use it and practice with it, and show us what you come up with, okay? And maybe compare the two, and that could be another thing that you could register, is what's the difference if you use this charcoal versus that charcoal. So I've given you a bunch of things to use, a bunch of ideas. I want you to go ahead and do research and come up with the rest of the things, the 10 things that you're going to need in order to show how to use charcoal best.